Alright, so hello guys, this is a follow-up to my bullet hell tutorial. Um, right now we're just adding on to the previous tutorial and learning new things such as object pooling, spawning bullets on a specific time, spawning bullets in a sequence, and more. So I'm just going to go ahead and work on object pooling. So with our bullet, we don't want our bullet to last forever. So I'm going to make a public float called lifetime, and I'm going to make a timer. And this timer basically determines how much time we have left until the bullet is destroyed. So now that we have those two things, I'm going to set my timer equal to lifetime, and I'm going to make my timer minus time.delta time because we want our timer to slowly subtract time as time moves on. Alright, so now that we have our timer, I'm going to make it so that if timer is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to have it so that it sets our game object to false. And the reason is because for a bullet manager, if the bullet object is set to false, then we know that we're not using it right now. Therefore, we can pull objects. Basically, the idea is instead of destroying and instantiating objects, we use existing objects that are already in the scene. So basically, set active if the game object is true, that means that it's currently being used. If the game object is false, it's not being used anymore. If we want to reuse it, we can just set to true again. So that's what we're going to do in our bullet manager. Alright, so now that we have that done, actually, let me make a quick public void called reset timer, because timer is a private variable, so we want to be able to reset it when in our bullet manager, so that we can reset it every single time we want to reuse a bullet. So timer is equal to lifetime, and I think that's all right. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make a new script called, and I'll put it in here. I'm gonna make a new script called bullet manager, or you can call it a pool manager or whatever you want to call it. I'll call it a bullet manager because that's simple to call right now. And what I'm gonna do is, we don't need much of this actually. All we need, well, let's start out with a list. So this list contains a list of the game objects that are currently being used. And in our start, let's initialize this list by creating a new list of game object. So you can think of a list as like an enhanced version of an array. But the length is not decided at start. Alright, so we want to be able to get our bullet from the pool. So actually, let's go back to our bullet spawner script. Actually, no, let's go. Yeah. Okay, so we want to be able to get our bullet from the pool. So let's say that there's bullets that are already here, but some of these bullets are not active. We want to be able to get one bullet that isn't active and then return it so that our bullet spawner can basically respawn that bullet, basically reuse that bullet. So I'm gonna make a public static. Actually, this can also be static too. We don't want to be, yeah. Public static game object get bullet from pool, and then this is going to, we're gonna go through each of our bullets. So for an I 0, I is less than bullets count, I plus plus. We're gonna go through each of our bullets, and then if bullets I active, so if our bullet active is false, which means that's not active, or you can phrase it like this and use an exclamation mark, which means not, then we want to return this bullet. basically, because we know that's not accurate. We just want to return the bullet. However, that is not enough because we haven't reset anything. So we want to go ahead in our bullet's eye, get component bullet, and then here we want to actually reset timer. So that way our timer is not 0 and it's reset. So that way it just recounts down back to 0. And we also want to set our bullet to active. Actually, let me put that beforehand. Yeah. Actually, no. Yeah. We want to set this active to true. And there we go. We can just return that bullet, and the bullet is able to be used. And then if none of our bullets are not active, then we can assume that there's no bullets that we can even use in this pool. So therefore, if none of these are valid, like if there's no bullets that are active, then I'll just return null because there's no bullets. Alright, so now that that's done, let's go to our bullet spawner. Alright, so here we are in our spawn bullets method. So basically, instead of instantiating this object, we want to be able to reuse an object. So we want to be able to use this function, and then if it does return null, then that means it's returning a bullet, which means that we can use that bullet instead of instantiating. However, if it returns null, then we are forced to instantiate object because there's no bullets to use in the list. So let's implement this in code, shall we? Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and make a game object. Actually, no, we can just set this to spawn bullets eye, the bullets that we're spawning. And then we can basically set that to get bullet manager, get bullet from pool. And then we can do if spawn bullets eye is equal to null, basically there's no objects in the list that we can use, then we're forced to instantiate something. However, if not, then we can just keep it as it is, but we also want to reset everything. So I believe what you'll want to do is we'll want to set spawn bullets eye. Probably want to reset the position, probably. Yeah. However, this is instantiating our bullet resource at the parent's transform. So how are we going to connect this to our transform here? And what I'll do is I'll just do spawn bullets eye transform set parent, and I'll set it to this transform, like here. And then I'll just reset our spawn bullet's local position to 0. So that way the position is reset. Yeah. Alright, so let's try this in the Unity editor. Let's see if it fails or not. Alright, so I'm gonna go back to my bullet, prefabs bullet, and let's make our lifeline like 3. We have to set our bullet manager, and this basically is gonna store our model behavior that manages the bullets and their pooling system. So I'm gonna play, and now you can see that the bullets are spawning. Are they being reused though? And guess what? They are being reused. If you look at the bullets, you can see many are actually inactive and many are active. So therefore, we're actually constantly reusing. You can actually see the bullets literally being not set active, and we're just reusing them constantly. So yeah, that's object pooling for you. Now I'm gonna fix the code so that you see whenever you spawn your objects, they're always under the parent, and you might not necessarily want them to always be under your bullet spawner. Maybe you're rotating your bullet spawner or something. Maybe you want your bullets to spawn right there, but you don't want them to rotate with your parent. So what I'm gonna go and do is I'm gonna go and make a checklist here, it called is parent. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that in the bullet spawner. So gonna make a public bool called is parent, and this is gonna say, do you want this to be attached to parent or not? And I'm basically gonna make it so that I can just go over here, and then if is parent, or if is parent is true, however you like to code, whatever is readable for you, then I'm gonna go ahead and go on our spawn bullets, and then set parent, transform set parent to null. And what that's going to do is that's just basically going to say, all right, instead of setting our parent to whatever we had it previously, just set it to top of the hierarchy. So it's basically not attached to any parent. So I'm going to go ahead and see if this works. We have a thing called is parent. All right, I'm going to try it, and let's see if it works. And yep, it works. Our bullets are actually unattached. Everything is working fine. Wonderful. So, what if you don't want your attacks to be the same each time? What if you want your attacks to be different each time? That's where object sequencing comes in. You can either loop through a list of different attacks, or even pick a random attack out of the list and use that. So, let's dig in. First, we're gonna create a scriptable object. So, I'm gonna go ahead and create a folder called data, and I'm gonna create a script called bullet spawn data, and this is gonna store the data for each spawn. So we want to make this extend scriptable object, and don't need that. We don't need these either. And then so that this can be visible in the asset menu, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this. This basically allows you to create an asset menu. I'm gonna change this to bullet spawn data. So that just allows us to create an asset menu. Now, we can literally just go to our bullet spawner, and this is basically the data that we're gonna be using for each spawn. Well, except timer. That's something that is actually very important for the bullet spawner. But this data is like what we use for our attack that we want to happen each time. So we're just gonna take this data and then put it under here. So now we have a scriptable object that could represent an individual attack. All right, now that's that done. So now that that's done, we can go ahead to create scriptable objects, bullet spawn data. And here, we can just go ahead and create an attack. Maybe we can call this attack 90 degrees, so it's like max 0 to 90 degrees. And then, to make number of bullets maybe like 3, can set is parent. We can make our cooldown maybe like 5. This is basically the time that passes after we spawn it. We can set our bullet speed to 5 and our bullet velocity to 1. So that's one attack. And then we can make another attack. Maybe we want an attack that does 180 degrees. So we can go and create a new scriptable object called bullet spawn data. And then we can do an attack of 180 degrees. We can basically use similar settings. Maybe I want this one to be slower than my previous one. I'll just set the same time here. I'll set this one to 4. And then, yeah. So that right there is our attack data. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of bullet spawn datas that is a list of all our attacks. And then we want to keep track of where we are in that list. So I'm going to create an int called index. And because our datas are actually in the list, we don't need these variables anymore. However, that's going to get us these errors. And the reason why is we need to access variables such as number of bullets, min rotation, and max rotation from under the attack in the list. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a bullet spawn data function that is going to get spawn data, well, at least the current one. I'm just gonna return spawn datas of index. So now what we can do is we can just put this function under here, and then boom, we can get the spawn data, and then we access the cooldown under our current spawn data. So I'm just gonna do that for each and every single one of these variables. This is a bunch of copying and pasting. Alright, so now that that is done, we need to figure out how we're gonna loop through the sequence. And every single time we want to go through our loop or increase our index is when we spawn a bullet. Because after we spawn a bullet, we obviously want to switch it so that becomes a different attack that we use later. So I'm going to go ahead and after spawn bullets, I'll just go and update. And then after that, I'll just increase our index +1. However, we do not want our index to be greater than the length of spawn datas. So I'm just going to go, and if index is greater than or equal to the length of spawn datas, then I'm just going to set I to 0. So that can loop over and over and over again, actually index to 0. Now, what if you want it to be random? So I'm going to create a public bool called isRandom. Well, not actually, no, that's going to be confusing with the other one. Alright, so isSequenceRandom. This is not equal to isRandom. Not if the bullets are random, but we want to select something random from our sequence. And then if that's the case, I'll just do if isSequenceRandom. And then I'm gonna do that, and then an else statement, so that if it's normal, we can list the normal sequence like that. So if the sequence is random, we probably want to make our index a random variable. So we're gonna make an index our random range from 0 to spawn datas length. And then so that way our index is random each time. Alright, so back to Unity. Before we go to our bullet spawner, I went to our attacks. I made the cooldown a bit shorter, 0.2 instead of like 5. And then I'm going to go to our bullet spawner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go attach, attack 90, and attack 180. And then, boom, there you go. You can see, look at the random attacks. The random attacks. So you can do it with different speeds, different cooldowns, different velocities, different rotations. It's great. You have some variety. And now, if I actually want to, I can actually go to my bullet spawner, isSequenceRandom, and then boom. Everything's random. Everything's random, you see? So you can really do a lot with this. Alright, so now let's spawn objects based on time. I'm going to go ahead and create a script called a time manager. And this is basically going to do everything that's going to manage our time. So here's our time manager. I'm going to make a public static bool called isTime. And this is basically going to return if the time is actually reached, like if you have reached that time. So you want to float seconds, and then I'm going to make a bool, a reference to a bool, whether the task is done or not. So if the task is not done, as in if you didn't spawn your bullets previously, because we're going to use this to spawn bullets on time, then I'm going to go ahead and check and see if the time is reached. So I'm going to go ahead and do a float called current time. And this is time dot time, and then a float called the future time, the time in the future. So we're basically going to calculate that, And then since we're using fixed updates, if we were using update, I could use time.delta time. However, we're going to be using fixed update, so we're going to use time.fixed delta time. It really depends whether you're calling this in fixed update or update. Or if you want, you can just go ahead and create a float here called delta time and then use that instead. Whatever floats your boat. Since we're going to be using fixed update, I'm just going to go ahead and do time delta fixed delta time. Alright, so our current time is the time that we're predicting in the future. Now we're going to see if the time that we want is in between the current time and the future time. Actually, let me change this to wanted time. And all these are in seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and make a bool called is reach time is going to be equal to current time is less than or equal to wanted time, and then wanted time is less than future time. Oh, and also don't do this. Don't do this. This is just going to return the errors because it doesn't work like that. Code doesn't work like that. Just do it and there instead. And then, if we reached our time, then we want our task to be done so we don't call this function again because our bullets already spawned. So there's no need to call it again. Else we're going to keep spawning bullets because the task is already done. So I'm going to go ahead and set task done to true. And then, this is not going to be called again. And I can just return reached time. Else, I'm just going to go ahead and return false. Alright, so now that we have that done, I'm going to go ahead in our bullet spawner, and because we're actually doing this manually, we're spawning the bullets manually. Therefore, I actually want to make a public bool called spawning automatically. And this will be disabled if we want to spawn manually. So if you want to spawn manually, you'll have to actually call this function on your own instead of doing it automatically for you in update. So I'm just going to go ahead and do if spawning automatically, and then just cover the entire update with this. I'm also going to consider putting this in spawn bullets instead, because we can get some errors of not doing that. Alright, so now that that is done, I'm going to go ahead and make a new script. I'll probably do like timed levels or something like that. Time scripts. I'll just make time level 1 or whatever. Like this is level 1, for example, or something like that if you want to spawn bullets. Alright, so here's our time level. I'm going to go ahead and create a private bool array that's going to store our tasks. And this is just telling us whether the task is done or not. We don't want to spawn the same attack for the same time. We don't want to repeat. And then I'm going to make a public game object. Not a game object. A public bullet spawner that is basically a reference to our bullet spawner that we're going to use to manually spawn the objects. Before we go in our fixed update, I'm going to use public void called start to define our time step. You can define a time step elsewhere if you want. Time dot fixed delta time equal to maybe something small. We want this to be as accurate as possible. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a public void called fixed update. It's not update. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the function that we created in our time manager. I'm going to use if time manager is time, and then let's say I want to spawn a bullet on bullets on 1 second, and I'm going to reference tasks 0. And then on that, I'm going to go ahead and do bullet spawner and then spawn bullets. And actually, my index probably should be public, because we want to be able to set our index in our time level so we can change the attacks for each second. So let's say I want to set my index to the first attack. Oh, bullet spawner index. So I'll set my index to 0 for the first attack. And then let's say I want a different attack. Maybe I want one on 2 seconds. Make sure that you change this, because for each time you use this, they should not be the same. So use tasks 1. You can actually go ahead if you want to. You can do like bool specific task or something like that. And then you can use that instead. But doing it in a list is just easier. So alright. Task basically tells us whether the attack is done or not. Alright, but what if you want to change your attack? We can instead, like maybe on 3 seconds, we can make the index 1. So in 3 seconds, we can change the index to something else. And if you want to, you can even go ahead and like do a for loop. You can create multiple tasks lists to store different ones. So let's say you want to... Then I'll move this up here because this stuff spawns before this one. So you can make different task lists too. And there you go. So I can go back to Unity. I can go ahead and create a timed level, whatever our level script is. Have my time level, reference the bullet spawner, and then I need to go to our bullet spawner, make sure it isn't spawning automatically. Boom. You see? And it's all on time. So you can see that it just keeps moving on. Like it actually spawned that 10 times until it reached 1 second. Because we're dividing this by 10, so therefore it's actually 1. And then you can actually spawn as much as you want here. But it can basically spawn on any time that you want. You can actually have it in sync with the music, which is really dope. And you can change the index too, which is what we just did there. Actually, if you wanted to, you could do like a function if I is less than 5, then bullet spawner index could be 1, else bullet spawner index could be 0. I need to remove this. If we want to do that, then we can do that. You see, the possibilities are endless. You can basically spawn on time. Anyway, I hope that tutorial was very helpful to you. I hope you learned a lot, and you can just keep adding and adding onto this bullet system as you so desire. Like, if you wanted to, you could actually have an offset for your bullet rotation and whatnot. And you can just keep adding and adding and adding. So hopefully that allows you to create some awesome bullet hell games, and hopefully learn something.